but I will, for everybody who's here, this is certainly a treat, and I think it's really cool that we do stuff like this because, if I'm you guys, the first time that, I really heard of the name Ralph Hardimon was because of his sticks. That I didn't know the person, that his stick is, I'm sure is still the most popular Vic Firth stick. It's certainly when it comes to the marching arts. I know Avon's got boxes of them and all that, and so so that's kind of and I'm sure a lot of you guys know of Ralph Hardimon probably because of his stick, but no, and then as I grew up in drum corps, you learn about and he'll hate me for saying this, but the legend that he is, and you start to learn where he came from, and with the Vanguard, and I'll let him tell his story and all that, but where this is going is that I remember the first time hanging with Ralph. I was with Crown, but Dean, he drugged me to a troopers camp when Dean and Ralph were writing for the troopers. And so Dean and I we flew to a couple of camps that year, and it was kind of fun hanging out with Ralph for sure. That was a great time. I was like, man, I'm hanging out with Ralph Hardimon. This is unbelievable to me. So that was fun. That's one of the first times I remember hanging, but I will tell you that the best time was, a few years ago, our families kind of got together, the Van Dorens and mine and Klesh's and Dean Westman and the family, and we all took a cruise together on a Disney cruise, and Ralph was there, and such an incredible time. So I actually probably, and Ralph will like that I'm saying this, I actually probably know Ralph more as a friend than a DCI legend. So which is great to say, but anyway, just so we review kind of how we do it. Ralph's going to kind of go for a little bit here, and he's going to kind of tell his story and where he came from and what he did, and which I think some of you probably don't know. I'm sure I'm going to learn something as well. And then when he's done, we'll do the same thing with questions. Put it in the chat if you have a question. I'll call you out, and then when you have that opportunity, introduce yourself, and so Ralph could see you. Say where you're from, what school do you go to, what's your major, all of those kinds of things, just to kind of make it a little bit more personal. So without further ado, Mr. Hardimon, it's so awesome that you're here. Ladies and gentlemen, Ralph Hardimon.
I love that. It's silent.
You don't hear anything.
But I believe it. Hey, listen, first of all, you guys, I just got to tell you how stoked I am to be able to just hang out with you, because, I'm a huge, huge fan. And, I'm not going to blow any smoke or anything like that. I'm good for telling the truth. I'm a huge fan. I always have been. So for me, I'm just, right now, I'm just tickle pink. And I wish I could see the whole horn line, and you guys, with your instruments and everything, and have you just blow my face off just for a second, as long as you guys are in tune, okay? As long as you're in tune. Otherwise, but I'm not worried about that. Anyways, a little bit of history about Ralph Hardimon. I grew up in a household, a poor household, 9 sisters and brothers. My 3 oldest sisters were violin, viola, and cello players, okay? Extraordinaire. And I really took hold to what they were doing because, well, number one is because you could shoot like arrows off of their instruments, for starters. As a kid, you see the bows that, violin bows and cello bows and this and that. Well, I looked at it as, let's take that bow, put it on the end of the string and pull it back and launch. And I found out there was a killer bow and arrow set until I accidentally broke a bow and my father got involved. So you know how that went. Never touched a bow again. Yeah. But they were the reason why I got involved in music. There were plenty of classical stacks of albums around my house that my dad always got for us to listen to. And so there was plenty of classical music. And so I grew up listening to it. And then it got to the point where, you know, seeing some orchestras and going to some concerts and checking out my sisters, just seeing what an orchestra was, you know, and growing up as a kid. And I fell in love with the conductor because obviously he was the guy in charge. You know, he had his music and he had a little stand and he's waving his baton and everybody's paying attention to him. And so I started mimicking that. I take my my sister's music and their stands and I put it up and put the music on, and all of a sudden I'd be conducting and everybody's like looking at me going, geez, you know, like, what's up with this guy, you know? And finally, my older sisters were talking to my parents about it and says, you know, I think we need to get him involved in music because look, he's really digging on, you know, what's happening with the orchestral side of things. So of course I went on and decided that perhaps it would be cool to be a drummer. Well, that flew out of the window real fast, okay, because my folks weren't having any of that banging around the house. And so they signed me up for different instruments. The first was flute, okay, and I hated it. So I didn't want to play flute, but, you know, I tried out anyways. Fortunately, I lost a tooth, and when I was blowing into the flute, you know, the air was not going in the right direction and I couldn't get a sound out of it. So they took me off of that and I went, no more flute. So then we went to string bass, okay? I had to stand on a stool to play this. Everybody was looking at my fingers and my hands and they're going, oh, you have the perfect hands for a string bass. Of course, I didn't know what they were talking about. All I knew was I was standing on a stool. And I thought that that was pretty strange. You know, I didn't want to be standing on anything to play an instrument. So we let that go by, a few more. Finally, we got to some brass instruments. And I turned out to be really, really good, kind of a natural, even though I played a little bit off to the side of my mouth. And, you know, some of my older friends started telling me that, you know, I had the perfect armature for Rudy Mucks and, you know, cheater mouthpieces and all this other kind of weird stuff. So that kind of turned me off a little bit. And I spent most of my time, you know, learning percussion. As I was growing up, I was really fond of Disneyland, as I still am. It's my special place. And I see a couple of guys on here, I know it's one of their special places too. Right, Mr. Clash?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And so I had a chance to go out to Orange County where Disneyland is. I lived in Los Angeles, and it's about 60 miles away. So I started getting some rides with some friends out there, and they said, hey, there's these drum corps that are out there. And I was like, drum corps, what are those? Well, I found out later on that I had joined the Los Angeles Junior Police Band, which was a huge, huge band back in the 60s and 70s. Yes, I am showing my age a little bit. I'm just a mere 68 years old.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, I'm kind of up there. But anyways, I'm trying to tie a couple of things in here together with Disneyland and the Police Junior Band. Very popular band, national champions back in the day, state champions every year. But when we got to the state championship in California, Officer Horde, who was the band director then, wasn't allowing any kids to go watch drum corps. And I was going, what? You know, this is all I heard about was drum corps. And so finally, I figured out why, because they were losing kids every year after state from the band to go to drum corps because drum corps was really cool. I remember seeing the Velvet Knights Drum and Bugle Corps. I don't even know if you guys are familiar with those guys because they're kind of defunct now, but they had some things to say back in the day. Not so much when I joined in 1967, but they came along, you know, pretty decent. So I started getting this drum corps thing going and getting my chops together, and that helped me get a job at Disneyland. All right. So I'm auditioning with these guys at, you know, some connections down there. And they said, sure, you can come audition. So I auditioned on snare drum. And the guy goes, yeah, that's pretty nice. Well, we got a job for you. Well, the job turned out to be Baloo the Bear. That was my first job at Disneyland. So it had nothing to do with playing drums or anything. The guy says, put this on, okay? So I was stoked about it until people started pulling my tail, and, you know, it wasn't fun. It was real hot inside of the costume as well. But that was my first gig, and then, you know, like I had to pay some Disney dues, okay? So I did, and later on, they let me play in several of the different bands. I played in the Fantasia band, which was pretty incredible. That's where I met most of the finer musicians from Los Angeles. I found out most of the guys that played in that band and the Alice in Wonderland card band were all musicians from Hanna-Barbera. Okay, they worked in Los Angeles in the studio, and they were all studio guys. They put the outfits on and they were gigging. I mean, this was a nice little side gig for them. It was really Fantasy on Parade, which happened every year around Christmas time. It went on for years. So I played with those guys for a while, met up with the guys from Hanna-Barbera, and I started getting some gigs. Which I really wanted to do was play professionally outside of, besides Disneyland, but I wanted to try to get in and do some session work. And it worked out. I managed to get in that mix, which is incredibly difficult. But somehow I got in because I knew some people, and just got into doing a lot of commercials and things like that for television. I never did any soundtrack stuff. I wasn't that good to do that, but some commercials. And the one where I made the most money is where I played one note, and it was on a timpani, and it was a timpani gliss. And it was for a Toyota commercial. And it went, Toyota, and then boom, it was this big bliss. You guys have probably never heard, any of you have never heard that, but it was real famous back in the day. And so I was really, really, really proud of that. Anyway, so I wound up gigging for a while with that. And then I played professionally for, besides the jingle work, I started playing in some jazz bands and, of course, wind ensembles. I went to maybe four different colleges at that particular time in the 70s. I wasn't really trying to go to one school and get a degree as much as I wanted to study with different people. So I was in college forever. I went to first was Cerritos Junior College, which was in Los Angeles, and this is where Woody Herman used to come in and get all of his band members from, because the jazz program there was incredible. Lots of famous players, people like Pancho Sanchez, who's a famous conga player, wound up playing a lot with quite a lot of people to this day. Couple other people that I was able to perform with was, God, I'm trying to think of some names right now. The group Genesis, I was able to do some session work with them, which was pretty hot back in the 70s. Did some more work in the early 80s with Jackie and Roy, who were really pretty famous jazz singers. In fact, they made their first jazz album when I was born in 1952, and I was fortunate enough to be around to re-record East of Suez. That was their first album they did in 52, and they re-recorded it, and so I was able to do stuff like that. In the meantime, you know, I was getting into starting to teach a little bit and still involved in drum corps. Later on, I had to make a decision whether I was going to play professionally or I was going to teach. And drum corps had a lot to do with it, and it pulled me away from the money-making gigs into what was dear to my heart. Okay? So those are decisions that probably you're getting faced with or perhaps in the future, and make your choice. I made mine, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Anyways, I wound up joining the Anaheim Kingsmen. If any of you guys are familiar with them, I joined, I left the Velvet Knights in 1970, started with the Anaheim Kingsmen in 1971. 1972, we won Nationals, which was the first DCI ever. Okay, this is before that, it was American Legion and VFW Nationals, huge. But DCI started their first official one was in 1972. And we won, and of course, the competition back then was the Blue Stars, the Santa Clara Vanguard, and the Anaheim Kingsmen. I'm thinking that Santa Clara, with the judges today, would have probably won because they were tighter than us, but we were like something that nobody had ever seen before. You know, we were this whole hype thing that we were going through, and very entertaining. Plus, we played Disney songs because Disneyland at one time sponsored the Anaheim Kingsmen. Okay, so we played Disney charts and this and that.
And you marched there, right?
Yes, I played in the snare line. I'm sorry?
You weren't teaching yet. You were marching there.
Well, we were teaching too. It was really interesting. I was going to bring that up in Anaheim, and I thought this is the way it worked at all the other drum corps too. We were, there was 3 or 4 of us in the line that did the writing and teaching, and it was no big deal. Our drum staff would ask us to do stuff, and we just did it, and we thought that that's the way everybody did it pretty much. We found out later that wasn't the case, so then we realized that we must have been kind of special guys. At least we thought we were, and obviously other people did too. So we started writing. I used to take care of the melodic stuff and the drum features, the drum solos. Melodics back then were timpani, okay? We had marching timpani, which was crazy, and I'm glad that I didn't participate in that because they were pretty heavy, if you know what I mean. But I knew quite a bit more than other people did in drum corps then about the melodic line, at least in the percussion section. So I started writing timpani stuff, and the percussion features, we were all about trying to be as fancy as the Blue Rock drum corps. They were from Delaware back then, a really, really strong powerhouse. And they had this big drum line. They had 4 snares, 4 tenors, and 4 double tenors, okay? Now that was pretty big back then. What they did in their percussion feature was the 4 tenors would turn their snares on, and then all of a sudden they would have 8 snares in their percussion feature. And this is back in 1973, around then, which was amazing because everybody had 5 or 6 snares at max, maybe 4 then. So that was pretty cool. We competed against Blue Rock, and those guys were all about general effect and stick flipping. So we took them as a model that we would do what they did, but do it better than them. Okay, just kind of following, you know, the guys that excited us. So we wound up winning high drums for a couple years after that with that model. So then we became something. We started getting popular. So I aged out in 1973. I was 21. And my mentor at the time was Jerry Kirby. He was a guy from the Troopers, and there were many, many great people that came out of the Troopers, like brass and percussion people. Fred Sanford, who's my best friend of yours. You guys, of course, you know about the Fred Sanford Trophy. That's the high drum trophy. Well, he was my best friend, and he did Santa Clara for years. And somehow I got invited over to work with him in 1975. At that particular time in 1975, Fred decided that he wanted to move on and do something a little different, because he had spent all those great years, him, the great Pete Emmons that did all the drill writing, and of course, Gail Royer, who was the corps director for Santa Clara. He wrote all the brass charts back then. Of course, everybody got their hands in there and kind of redid it over the years, but he was the guy responsible for that. So, you know, I'm starting to hang out with Santa Clara. Fred went over to Madison in '76, so I took over the percussion program. That was my first year officially writing for the corps that I admired big time as a competitor, Santa Clara Vanguard, pretty hip back in the days. So I wound up writing for my first time a whole show, and that was in 1976. The corps took third, the percussion line took third. I didn't feel so bad, but I was kind of used to winning since we had taken high drums, you know, 2 years prior to that. So that was, winning was something that back then to let me know that, you know, we were pretty decent, okay, that we had something to say. So Fred Sanford decided to come back in 1977, and we taught together from 77 through 80. Couple of national champions, 2 or 3 high drums when we were all together. You know, we were pretty hot back in the day. You know, there's some albums for you guys to check out if you guys are interested in checking out some of the stuff, because it wasn't just rudimental percussion. It was, you know, we were the guys that were actually starting to put some musicianship into our writing for drums, and it was a hard thing to bust through in the activity, because really it was all about, you know, chops and rudiments and stuff. And so we kind of broke the ice for the activity to approach things from a more of a musical standpoint. Okay. So we had fun with that. It was, like I said, with Fred all the way to 1980. That was his last show. And then, of course, I took over the line again from 1981 to, man, 90. Okay. Lots of time. Again, won a couple more high drum trophies, and, you know, it was always in the top 3 in drums. It was just kind of where we thought we belonged. And, you know, we had a lot to deal with. In the meantime, we're starting to compete against a real heavy with the cadets, and that was when Michael Kless was over there at that time. Him and Tom Hannum, another great friend of mine, percussion guy. And so we started going back and forth and just beating the crap out of each other from a competitive standpoint. And it just made us, you know, all of us were just, you know, we were good. We were just good at it. You know, and the motivation, of course, was competition back then. We always liked to win, but, you know, we were talking about being great musicians more than anything, okay? That was one thing that I was trying to instill in my program always, was to be a great musician, and those are the things that we talked about a lot. And it was difficult because, you know, everybody wants to win, but that's what that was all about. So anyways, with cadets, beating the crap out of each other. Crown wasn't around yet, but they were thought about, obviously. And then, you know, Star of Indiana comes along, and meanwhile, Santa Clara was a little bit out of it. I think they were probably hanging around 3rd or 4th then or something like that. And the battle was between cadets. No. Yes, cadets and Star. You guys, am I right, Michael? Clash? Oh, he's off. Am I right, Harloff?
Yeah, Clash is still here.
What year?
Yeah, I was talking about the competition back in those days was cadets and Star of Indiana. And am I correct about that?
What years was that?
Do you remember, Matt? Were you marching in when everybody was going back to those
Yeah.
cadets? And
That would be the early '90s. I mean, we were chasing everybody. 1990 was kind of a breakout year, although we ended up third.
right.
91 we won. That was a hard year for the cadets, if I'm not mistaken. 92 cadets came back with their whole singer show, which was awesome.
Exactly.
And then we were there in the top three. 93 cadets and star that summer was kind of a two-man race.
Yeah, it really was. So those were the days that I'm talking about when Santa Clara wasn't really in the picture.
Yeah, but they were like 85. We duked it out for first and second.
Yeah.
That's right.
87, maybe 87. Everybody thought it was going to be the Cavaliers' year,
Oh,
and we wound up beating Santa Clara by 1/10 at finals.
yes. Let me tell you something about that 110. 110 was in drums. We lost drums by 1/10 of a point.
And you were smoking that year, Ralph. That's one of your best drum lines. I got to chime in there. 87 Vanguard drum line is smoking.
Yeah, it was one of the better lines, but it wasn't the champs. Tom and his boys took us out. It was like, oh,
that was their 20, right? 87.
That's right. Perfect score in drums. And so, of course, everybody's coming to me, oh, man, like, I bet you can't wait till you get to the DCI Congress, man, so you can brag about that.
No, those years were so fun, though. And there's two things I remember about that. One was 85, 86, and 87. It was the first 3 years that I rode for Garfield. I was 23 when I started, and I had kind of no idea, half of an idea what I was doing, and I just was afraid to fail, so I worked really hard. And Ralph Hardimon was the nicest guy of anybody to me during that time. He was such a friend, such a fan, such a supporter, and I was always like, this guy is like all universe Ralph Hardimon. Why is he being so nice to me? I have no idea. So fast forward to what was the year we did our first cruise, Matt?
Oh, I don't remember. I mentioned it before you got on to the kids, but I don't remember the year.
I asked Ralph many, many years later, I asked Ralph on that cruise. I said, I've always wanted to know, why were you so nice to me back then? I was like nobody. You were like all world Ralph Hardimon. It was awesome.
Yeah, well, check it out. I mean, as I mentioned to you guys earlier before Michael came on, he was a drummer. He was in the school of percussion, all right? But that wasn't a reason. I was nice to everybody. I mean, that was decent because it was just a matter of respect, okay?
Yeah. But you were one of the few, Ralph. Like, there was a lot of people that were not nice to me because I was this young kid and we were beating the pants off of people.
Yeah, well, you know what?
Yeah.
Screw them. That's what I have to say.
I'll tell you the other thing I remember about the Vanguard, and I believe it was 87. CYO Nationals, Ohio, right? Was that the thing that was like prelims one day, finals the next day? Is like a 2-day event?
U.S. Open.
U.S. Open, yeah. I remember seeing them. That was the first time I saw them that year. And they got to Great Gate of Kiev. And I found myself like halfway through that, I found my legs just making me stand up. It was like loud and in my face, and it just kept going. And I was like, I just couldn't sit down. It was the most unbelievable thing I felt in my life at that point.
Yeah, well, we did do some stuff that turned a lot of people on that I wound up being pretty proud of. That was one chart that I was very proud of. And
yeah,
there was one in 1984 that I did. It was this pianissimo percussion feature, something that I wanted to bring to the activity because, the first thing when people see drums and gongs and bass drums is preparing themselves to cover up their ears.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's just a natural thing. You see this guy with this big mallet and he's got this gong and this bass drum. You got to be ready to cover, So I did this percussion feature. It was piano, mezzo piano, and it had one sforzando crash unison attack in it, which was probably as loud as mezzo forte. I think it probably sounded like fortissimo because everything else was so soft. But that was kind of a little trick that I learned from Jim Prime, okay? You guys had a chance to meet him, didn't you?
Yeah, that was our first one we ever did. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, and talking about a sweetheart of a guy, Jim Prime, you know, it was just. But I found out some about him and Singali. They were snakes galore, man. Like they were slick willies, man. And I tell you, we wound up being best of friends because you know, I used to at that particular time. I used to go to Europe quite a bit because I had Premier Percussion that was from the Midlands and in the mother country. And then in Switzerland, I was doing Paiste cymbals. So I'd fly from California to the East Coast, hop on flight 101. Which airline was that? What was that big airline where it crashed? But,
People's Express.
oh God, People Express.
People Depressed.
I remember that. No, this was a big airline that used to fly over to Europe when everybody else, you know, but I don't know, it'll come. But so I used to always come out a couple of days early so I could hang out with Singali and Jim Prime and Mark Sylvester and, you know, and Tom Hannum. And, you know, just because it's like, these are the guys that I'm competing against. And we all really like, just dug each other because we knew that we were putting out some good stuff and we were becoming great teachers or good teachers, at least at that particular time. And so it was like, you know, we just loved seeing each other. So I used to come out early and hang out and Jim Prime used to always be over at Zingali's house because when George Zingali was writing drill, Jimmer always had to be there because George wasn't afraid to ask, "Hey, Jimmer, can we have the mellophones over here?" and Jimmer would look at the, you know, at what George was writing, and he would go, "No," and Zingali would never argue with him. I mean, you know, he would just because you know, Jimmer's dad was a pretty heavy-duty judge back in the day, and he did a lot of color guard, and he knew, you know. He knew quite a bit about drill and guard and stuff. So Jimmer was a big part of that. But yeah, I used to spend a lot of time with those guys because we were all kind of growing up together. And there was this
They all lived together.
Huh?
They all lived together for a while.
Yeah, out in Nyack, I believe.
Yeah, that's why those years were so magical, man. They all lived in the same house and they just did this stuff all the time. And then when we'd have like the drum camps, we would sleep in the basement of that house on a dirt floor.
That's right.
Dirt floor every weekend.
I'll tell you guys something that's really, really hilarious. Okay, and then this is, again, I'm out visiting before I go out to Europe. And so Tom Hannum invites me to a cadet drumline rehearsal. Okay, and I'm like, God, man, how cool is this? So I'm at rehearsal, and the drumline, see, Tom Unks was in the snare line. In fact, he was the center guy over there. For those of you guys that don't know him, I think he did some stuff with Crown a little bit, didn't he?
Yep.
3, 4, 5 years ago.
Yep.
But certainly cadets, and he's still over with cadets now. He's been there forever. So he was in the snare line. There was something that they kept rehearsing, and all of a sudden I thought that I was running the session, but I wasn't. I was like some observer, and I cut the drum line. I just went, cut, and I just stood up and started walking towards the drum line, and I started going, what are you guys? And I look over at Tom Hannum, and he's like going, what are you doing? And I turn back around and I go, holy crap, what am I doing here? So I look over at Tom Unks, And, you know, he's like this with his sticks and he's going, he's just steaming at me. The guy's like, how dare this Santa Clara Vanguard guy come over here and cut our drum line? I was like, holy mackerel. I'll never, ever forget that. And I just, you know, I apologize to him all the time about that every time I see him. But yeah, that was, I wouldn't suggest you guys do anything like that. You know, just step into anybody's rehearsal and just kind of cut them. But they were ticking too much for me, so I had to do it. So anyways, just rattling on here, a little bit more with my drum corps career. I did Santa Clara for maybe 16 years and then consulted with them for another 5 or 6 because a bunch of my students were teaching the line then. But at the same time, I started teaching the Blue Knights because, again, George Zingali and Jim Prime decided that they wanted to teach the Blue Knights, and they talked me into going over and working with them. And that was a chance for me to work with Zingali. Are you kidding me? You know, so wound up doing those guys for, I think, another 16 years or so as well. Larry Shane was over there. You know, that's where we met. And we came up with some pretty good products. We weren't winning nationals, but the drumline did take second one year and third and fourth. So we were kind of in the mix, you know, and a lot of people saying, oh, they're just doing that because you used to teach, you know, blah, 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 Santa Clara and this and that. I'm going, no, man, we put out some good stuff over there. And, you know, it just got recognized. You know, it's just one of those things. So had a lot of fun with that. Finally aged out of teaching core. I still, you know, do some consulting here and there, but I wind up making it in a lot of Hall of Fames, you know, that I don't mention much, but I'm really proud of them. So I'll kind of let you know where I'm at with that. My first one I got was from Santa Clara Vanguard. They put me in their Hall of Fame the year after we put Fred Sanford in, who was, again, I told you earlier, my mentor. Then DCI decided that I should be in their Hall of Fame. And so I accepted that. And I can't remember when that was. It was, you know, everything's kind of blurry to me right now. Then I got a Lifetime Achievement Award from Sabian Cymbals, which is the same as Zildjian because it's just the brothers who, you know, they're brothers. And in case you guys didn't know about that, the cymbal company, the cymbals are the same. They just got different names because it's the same family and they all have a secret formula to make those things. So that was kind of like a Hall of Fame thing. And I think that they gave that to me just to keep me away from Zildjian. Anyway, so then there's the Drum Corps World Hall of Fame, which is, you know, what is that? Is that like a senior corps?
I don't know.
Yeah, so I'll say,
Jeff, I think Jeff just was inducted into that not too long ago. Jeff Saktic.
Yes.
oh yeah? Yeah, well that would, okay. So maybe, I don't know who started first. I think they probably were a lot longer than DCI. But then just the recent one, I got put into the Percussive Art Society Hall of Fame, which is like, it doesn't get any better than that for a drummer or percussionist. And it's kind of outside of the drum corps world. It goes beyond the drum corps world. So I'm really, really, really proud of that for a lot of things I do. It's something that I don't talk about much, but you know, since it's something that's so important to me, and I thought I'd share that with you. Awesome. I got tons of stories, a lot of good ones, a lot of mischievous stories when I was you guys' age, running around in drum corps, and I'm not going to say anything about that except for I survived. So be careful. You got hawks out there looking out for you guys. But let me tell you something about your drum corps, okay? That I feel about, and I never get to say this much to a lot of people, especially the horn line. The horn line is the best horn line in the world, okay? period. Are you hearing me? What I'm saying? Yes, money. And it is what it is. And I'm not just saying this to stroke you guys. I'm actually stroking you guys that are well, I'm stroking you guys too, but Matt and Klesh and the rest of the brass staff is just absolutely incredible. And if you think about it, there's nothing else like you guys in the world. There's not 80 some brass players that play like you guys. It just doesn't exist. Blue Devils are close. Okay, but I don't know if you guys think about this like I think about it, but there's nothing else in the universe that we know of that comes close to 80 brass players sounding and playing the way you guys do. It's just out of this world. There's nothing like it. Now, in the world of percussion, Tom Hannum and I, and we've done some nice things and brought some special things to the table for marching percussion. A few people have, but this brass thing is just another whole level. And it is what it is. When it first started, when you guys first started kicking butt and taking names, maybe 4, 5, 6 years ago, something like that. I don't know. Around the time when you guys were doing that, what show was that? The Grass is Greener or some kind of, do you know what I'm talking about, Matt?
Yep.
Yeah.
That was our 2009 show. Yeah.
Yeah, it was around then, and maybe a few years before that, I started going, good God, man, what the hell's going on here? This is unbelievable. And then I started looking at the numbers, and I started telling everybody, just screaming, the numbers are just too close together. They're doing this because, they want competition. But I can say this to you guys. I just never thought that was fair, and I feel really good about saying that to you from just talking about stuff from a competitive standpoint. But there's nothing like the Crown Brass line. I mean, there just isn't, and I want you guys to hear that I'm being sincere and speaking from my heart. A drum guy, as they call us in drum corps. Hey, he's a drum guy. I'm a musician, okay? That's what I am. But, guys, just think about it. I mean, I've been all over the world now several times because the drum corps has allowed me to do that. A guy from the hood, that travels internationally, and I've been everywhere, and I haven't seen anything remotely close. I've seen all the best orchestras in the world and gone to live performances everywhere, especially over in Europe. And, you see the brass players there, but this is just a handful of them, and man, they will take a concert hall down if they ever get a chance to, as you guys well know. Okay, but that's the closest that I've seen to anything like your brass program. And I've gotten a couple of times to see you guys actually warm up and just stand there in awe and just like freak out and just crack up, especially when you got Matt in the center of this circle. And I'm going, aren't those guys going to have a release era some goddamn time here? Because he just goes, and everybody goes, yeah. I'm going, what the hell is that, man? What are you guys doing? What's the trick to that shit? I want to know. There's something going on there. And it just tickles me pink. The quality of sound, I know. Listen, I know you guys got some of the best brass, probably horns that you can get your hands on that the activity can offer for you. But regardless of what it is, the sounds that you guys and a handful of other instructors, what you guys get out of your players is just remarkable. And there's a two-way street. What you guys as staff, what you guys bring to the table for your students, we call them kids, but they don't look like kids to me, but you're still kids, I guess. Along with your talent level, this is what happens. And it started someplace and it just went, and it's consistent every single year. And I'm just going, it's not the same players. I mean, some people got to age out and get out of here. I don't know. I'm just freaked out about it. And I tell people all the time, anybody that I know, and I play recordings for them, and sometimes I'll even put on my hat just to, so everybody can see what the dealio is. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, you guys, you gotta feel really proud of yourselves and very special to be a part of this program over here. I mean, I know these guys are happy to have you. For God's sakes, man. I mean, the things that I would, if I was able to have the talent level in drums that you guys are able to have together as a brass line, I could be really saying some serious shit, you know? I'm just saying, you know, I'm really proud of you. I'm proud of what you guys do. I get it. I understand it. And please know that I know what I'm talking about when I say that there's nothing else in the world like you guys. And that's the truth. I've been around to check it out. And I'm constantly have you guys as a brass line up against anything. And I'm not just talking about drum corps brass. I'm talking brass, period. Okay? I bet you guys, if you were playing on shams and sack butts and stuff like that, you still would sound fabulous. You know. By the way, what brass instruments do you guys use? I'm just curious.
We're on Yamahas. Yeah.
Those guys.
Yeah.
Look at the homeboys up there going, yeah, Yamaha in the house. So I'm curious about this, since it's brass players here. How does your mouthpiece thing work? Do you guys have them playing on certain ones, or do they have their owns from like their teachers that they study? How does that work? I mean, how do you get that to work?
I'll start, brass staff or any kids you want to chime in, please do. We did that a while ago where we used to say, hey, you know what, let's make sure we have everybody on this mouthpiece. We used to do that, but we don't anymore. I mean, we'll have recommendations. You know, we might say, hey, you know what, if you want to make our line, you need to sound this way, and you will sound this way. You'll have a better chance to sound this way if you're on this mouthpiece. So it's more of because our kids are so good and they're college, you know, they're in their own, you know, they're in their own program, you know. And another thing I'd like to say we pride ourselves into attempting anyway is when they go back to their school after a summer of Crown, that we want them to be better than when they left. And so that's not only with their studio, but within their college programs and their college ensembles and stuff like that. So if they have a mouthpiece that they enjoy playing on and they're comfortable with, if they sound how we like for them to sound, then they play on that mouthpiece.
Okay.
So we used to require a certain mouthpiece a while ago, but I don't think we really do that anymore. We like the kids to be comfortable. It's like, you know, I'm watching The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan stuff, you know, he's setting up his shoes, you know, and he wants to be on a certain amount of shoes because it makes him do his thing. And it's like, we want our kids to be on the right shoes, you know, on the ones that they have, you know, that would be my take on it. I'm not sure if anybody has anything to add to that, but.
Who's that wrote the message about the number 19 baritone?
Sammer.
I did. Yeah. So Dylan Toombs had us all play on Bach mouthpieces.
Right.
So that was just what we did for the season.
Okay. Yeah, you know, I understand what you're saying, Matt, and I was just curious about that because, you know, because the level of players that you guys audition and get into, you know, your brass ensemble, I would think that because of the level that you wouldn't mind so much of what mouthpieces that everybody's playing on, and you wouldn't want to get into any war that way. Of course, you know, a lot of it has to do with the sound that you're looking for, but I'm thinking that the sound you're looking for is is probably pretty close to all, brass educators that are good. Everybody's looking for that same wonderful, fat, beautiful, tone.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let me ask you another question in terms of tone and intonation, T&I. Is that something that you have to be really concerned with, or is that something because of the players that you select that you don't have to worry about that so much? Because I got some ears, man, and if anything is slightly out of tune, I just want to bash my head on the ground. That was something I learned from my mom and dad. When we were all kids, they were like, there's this and there's this and there's technique and everything, and then there's playing in tune along with all that. And this is why you like these guys better than these guys. I mean, they were actually teaching us. So, pitch is really a big deal to me. And how's that work? How's that work for you?
Well, and again, I can start, but first of all, the kids' ears are absolutely incredible, and I've learned this through the past few weeks when we put some virtual things together, and it's been really eye-opening how the kids are. We teach blending with their neighbors, playing within their trios and all that stuff, and how their ears control a lot of that. Because when I put them together, there's you could, in some cases, that's like, we would never sound like that if we were together. That would never happen. So their ears are incredibly trained. So there is that, but the staff does a great job of teaching the kids, and the kids obviously come in with some knowledge as well of how to play every single note in tune. What you need to do to the instrument to make sure that every note is played in tune, they know what that is. And then we have, we study the chords. Michael knows the chords. He knows exactly what chords to tune. He'll tell the whole staff, and he'll tell the kids, hey, it's this chord. And actually this one is this chord on top of this chord. So let's tune it this way, and then we, adjust from there. And then you have the staff again that is incredible about, hey, you know what, let's use this fingering because this will make this chord in tune. So so there's a lot of education with it. There's a lot of training with playing in tune and all of that. And then again, Michael has those ears as well. And it's great because I love when Michael comes in, because sometimes I get high school ears for being in high school world. And then, you get, oh yeah, okay, that's right. That's really is out of tune, even though it's the best thing I've heard in a month. So Michael, you want to piggyback that?
Yeah.
No, I think you covered it all. And the other thing they do, Ralph, is they work with the tonal energy tuner, and they use drones. They do a lot of stuff like that. So they know how to tune major thirds and minor thirds and things like that. So like Matt said, there's a lot of education in it, and they work really hard on it. It's not something that just happens.
Well, yeah, that there's no doubt about it. And I totally understand what you guys are saying, because it's really important to me, and it's something that I've studied as well. And I just was really wanted to see if there was some, extra secrets.
I try not to write in B major.
I was going to say the key has a lot to do with it. Sure. Yeah. But then, there's also, the orchestras that'll, that some of our great composers of the past didn't give a hooty booty about keys.
Oh, you mentioned that, Ralph, and Michael called me and said, okay, Matt, when we did Fanfare for the Common Man, he goes,
here we go.
Do you want it to end in D major, or do you want the beginning, do you want that to be in open partials? Because that's not going to happen at this. I'm not going to be able to end in B flat and have the beginning be open partials.
Okay.
And so we ended up choosing that the beginning would be open partials.
Just like the original.
And then we ended up in, the last was, I believe, D.
D frickin' major. Yes,
So,
sir. Ringy dingy ding. And that thing rang.
Bells
The
We had to work
tubas
on
up in
that
the
one a
high
lot.
D. It was awesome.
Yeah, we had to work on that a lot.
I
Yeah.
remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Golly, man. Now I'm like getting chills now, because I'm looking at everybody's faces, and I trust me, I don't miss a lot, and I'm just looking at people's response to some questions and some of the things, because
Yeah.
I react big time. I'm like jovial about I don't hold anything back, and I'm going through so much right now, just seeing you guys and just knowing who you are. I wish that you guys had your instruments and you would just play, like something, some beautiful chorale of some
That would be special.
That'd be
Yeah, that would be. After you warm up, do your thing and put your, the correct mouthpiece in. All right. Anybody got any questions? I think, time's flying here. I don't know what kind of.
Yeah. You know what, Ralph? I'll start. And kids, if you guys have anything, go for it. But we'll get back to percussion world, and then this might go somewhere else. But in your time, the time that you've been around, the evolution of the percussion section has been borderline miraculous. I mean, and you mentioned marching timpani, and then the evolution of finally there's a pit, and the evolution of now we're into electronics and how they write now. I guess if you want to comment on that, I guess my question to you would be, what do you think what was the biggest step in that percussion evolution of what it is today? And do you have any thoughts about where that could go? And I would even say where drum corps could go.
Because we still got 4 instruments.
Our evolution has been rotor piston. Now we have 2 valve for a long G bugle, and then now we're playing on real instruments.
Yeah.
And
Still
that's
4
it,
of them.
Well, yeah, that's pretty interesting. I think in terms of the evolution, that's something that Tom Hannum and I both were a part of. Yep. Was the pit. We took upon ourselves to invent that, and this was over some phone calls. We chatted about it, and I tell people about this all the time. I haven't spoke with Tom about it since, but back then, we were sharing ideas big time, and so we decided that it was time to get the marching xylophones and vibraphones and freaking marching chimes with counterweights on the back, and you're sinking into the ground from so much weight. But we had to do something about that. It just seemed weird. I can remember when we first brought timpani out, we had to take the wheels off the timpani, okay? Because everybody was afraid that they were going to make some lines in the grass or something when we were wheeling them out. I'm going, timpani, I mean, come on, man. It took like 3 or 4 years just to get us the wheels back on.
Ralph, I don't mean to interrupt you, but back then, were there rules of what you could or could not use in the pit?
No, there weren't any rules, and that's when we started expanding. Like, of course, we started out with 1 set of bells, a vibraphone, a xylophone, and marimba. And then Hannum started bringing out, a variety of concert toms and stuff. And I was going, yes, of course. This is all the stuff that, we did in college with percussion ensembles, all of these instruments. So the sky was the limit all the way out to what was that thing that I found out in the book, I found in the dirt. It's one of these little, it's a little tool that you do, a portable tool that you use to grate, to dig up beds, for planting. I forget
Like
what
a spade?
Huh?
A spade? Like those little shovel spades?
It's not a shovel, but it has all these little spike things going out, okay? So anyways, I saw it in the bushes and I picked it up and I was like shaking the dirt off of it and it went, ring. I went, oh shit, this is in, you know. So we just started, you know, getting our little percussion thing over. And, you know, I was going to Japan quite a bit back in those days too. So they had, you know, some pretty interesting little percussion instruments over there. We used to call them the little man in Japan, but it was actually a baby rattler. This little thing, and it would go, I'm going, okay, that's in. So we just started actually finding instruments that we could actually write for that were a treat and something fresh to the ears. And that's how things evolved. Then it started getting ridiculous to, you know, you got to have 5 marimbas and 5 vibraphone and 6,000 of these and that. And you know, then you had to get, you know, a separate core truck and this and that. And I think, speaking of evolution, I would say that for it to keep going, we have to get rid of some of the instruments because we don't really need them all. You know, and that's a tough task because, you know, back then, you know, our excuse is, well, you know, we have more people with talent and we need more people, you know, to, you know, we're doing this so more people can play. You know, just like, remember when 36 horns was it? And then 42. And then after that, it just, you know, and all of a sudden it's like, what, 80 something now. So it's kind of, you know, more brass is fine, but adding maybe a couple more marimba, no, I think that's a waste. And, you know, for the thing to keep evolving, I think less instruments are needed, especially with all the synthesizers and all the electronic stuff right now. There's sounds that are out right now that can mimic anything that we have pretty close. It'll never take the place of a, you know, a good marimba player or a good trumpet player, or brass player, whatever. It'll never take the place, but there's some stuff out right now that's pretty dang close, you know. And so in terms of, again, in terms of evolution, I think that there's room for the writing to grow. I think that there's still just a little too many notes in a few places. And I remember back in 1981 in Modern Drummer magazine, I did an article on, it was called The Art of Rudimental Drumming versus Musicianship, okay? Which is, you know, our thing is all about rudiments and this and that and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, we're trying to make music right now. So there is a little bit difference than playing your Radamancues and your flam drags and then trying to do some shaping like a regular percussion ensemble or a regular percussionist would do with an orchestra. It is an accompaniment instrument until it's time for it to solo. That's what a lot of people forget. Now that's changed a little bit in drum corps, but it's the same thing like with marching band. If you have a great snare line, a great drum line, and the woodwind section is time for them to be showed off and they get blasted out of your badass percussion, flipping sticks and cheese dogging, then you're gonna get an F- from me, you know. Well, man, our drum line's better, yeah, but this isn't a drumline competition. You know, there's more to the big picture. So I still feel like that on occasion the drums step on the brass where they don't have to, but that's a taste thing that that hopefully it'll evolve to that and people won't be afraid to make those kind of changes. You just got to back it up and say, well, I can't do this because we're stepping on, you know, the trumpet's a little too much right here, and it's best to tacit and let them have it, and then maybe support later on or do a, you know, just write the show where there's an antecedent consequent thing or something, question answer, or you could do stuff to trade off the voices, but not try to get everybody to play at the same time all the time. So I'm hoping that it can evolve into something like that. And I just got to talk with a few people and see if they have the guts to do that. It would take like 2 or 3 of the top drum lines to really, really do that. Now, at the same time, in terms of that wowing people, you know, it's, let's face it, it's not the same audience as you would inside of a, well, let's put it this way. there's an opera house, there's an orchestra house, and then there's this thing that the Romans built for the peasants, and that's these stadiums, okay? All right, so you're not going to be able to get away with the same thing you do in an opera house as you do in a stadium and vice versa. So there is a place for everybody, but I still think that there's some growth in terms of just good old solid musicianship, regardless of what arena you're playing in, that we can evolve in a little bit more, especially on the percussion side. Does that make any sense at all?
Huge sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't want to be like frothing at the beat because I tend to do that sometimes. I'm not really the best public speaker. But when I'm teaching, I do get my point across one way or the other. I'm just saying. I try not to be mean. I wear a lot of hats, and I tell all the people that I have hats and they switch all the time. Like I'm a jokester and I'm serious, and it's up to you to figure it out. I can't be Mr. Numb all the time, and I can't be Mr. Wacko all the time. Although I wish I could be Mr. Wacko all the time. It didn't seem to bother George Zingali. And I don't know if anybody around here knows him besides your three guys that are the staff here, but he was really quite a special guy, and he was so special that he could be whatever he wanted to be, which was Wacko City. But he would back it up with his product and his teaching skills. So much for that, huh? I'm looking forward to the time to come out and visit you guys, once we get past this no season thing here. And next year around, I'd like to come out and visit and just hang out. And
That would be great, Ralph.
I have to get permission, though. I got to stay out of everybody's way ever since I started cutting drum lines. And that wasn't the first time that happened. That happened 2 more times. Once after I had left Santa Clara and went to Blue Knights, and Scott Johnson, doing the Blue Devils, decided to come over and take my gig. I cut Santa Clara's drum line too. And I just totally lost it. I just cut him. So I got to keep my eye on myself that let's just walk up and just cut you guys.
Well, Ralph, maybe sometime Crown will end up coming to the Denver show.
Well, that would be cool. Maybe Crown's about due, huh?
Well, I think there was talk there when, DCI was going to do like half a season. There was talk that they were going to send us to Denver. Obviously, it didn't work out because we don't have a summer and all that. But maybe that will go into the next year, and maybe we'll end up. We would just have to leave and head west pretty quick from the summer symposium if we were to still do that. And I know Jim likes to do that. It's a nice money maker, and I'm sure going through this summer, he's going to take any opportunity to make some money. I mean, we're the buses don't move for 3 days. We have a stadium. Kids buy thousands of T-shirts. It's a nice place for us to be for a few days. But
I totally get it.
But then we could, haul ass, go west sometime. Maybe I know that was talked about. Maybe they'll just transfer that into next summer.
Well, perhaps that would be cool because if you do come that far west, that everybody out in California is going to want you to come. Yeah. You got to do that as well, and go out and Blue Devil and Santa Clara land and do some spanking out that way on the way, back to your usual. It's like, see, I love you, but. Well, that would be cool because if you do, then I could take you guys out to some special places for dinner. I wish I could take the whole.
That would be awesome.
Out, but then the drums would get pissed off and think, "What kind of guy am I?"
You're a musician.
You're a musician.
And then I tell them I'm a music guy. But that would be nice, and certainly you guys would help pack the stands. But there's nothing like your past gigs where there's a guarantee of you guys making money. Your own stadium and being parked for a while,
Yeah.
And giving your kids a break from traveling cross country,
Ralph, it's in 2013. That's what worked for Crown. you know, we went out there and put a spanking on them, and they just never recovered.
Who never recovered?
The Blue Devils of Santa Clara. Blue Devils didn't.
I'm glad I'm not. By the way, I taught the Blue Devils too. I didn't tell you, I taught to almost everybody. I didn't teach Crown. I didn't teach cadets, and I didn't teach Star, but I taught almost everybody else at one time. I mean, I even forget. I was trying to think of that earlier today, and I started writing names down. I'm going, forget about it. But anyways, I hope you guys do come out, but I certainly want to spend some time in your horn art.
Well, you are always welcome in our circle.
That would mean so much. And hopefully, you know, some of you guys will still be around. Maybe, you know, by then, you know, you guys have moved on, you players, and on the bigger, better things, and you'll be teaching and you know, traveling the world, being brass players or something cool like that. One thing I will say, and you guys know this, that this drum corps thing is a really good thing for all of us, especially you guys coming up in it. Whether you decide to pursue your career in music or not, the work ethics from it, you can apply to anything. And that's what I like about our activity more than anything. It's like the work ethic that we all learn from it can be applied to anything, that whatever you guys decide to pursue your career in. So thank you guys.
Ralph,
Thanks
thank you for being here.
Thanks for hanging out and dealing with this old drum guy talking smack. You know?
Great to hear.
Awesome. Ralph, thank you so much. We'll let you go. Be safe, my friend. And we'll definitely, when we, you know, next time we see you in the summer, you are definitely coming in the circle, no doubt about it.
Sweet.
Thank you, Ralph. Great seeing you, man. Be good.
Thanks,
Take
Ralph.
care.
Ralph,
Love you, Ralph.
You guys.
love you, Ralph. Thank
Take
you.
care. All right, Oliver and Joseph. We'll see you with that British flag back there. Take care. All right, guys. Bye-bye.
Later.